One of the most important sets of choices that companies make is what resources and capabilities they'll invest to build. Okay, so companies may invest in resources like a brand or intellectual property. They might invest in capabilities like logistics or new product development. But this is a crucial choice that firms make. But the reality is, unfortunately, not all resources, not all capabilities are strategic. They don't all help a firm to create, capture, and sustain economic value over time. So how do you know, as a practical matter, whether a resource or capability is likely to be strategic? Well, in the Collis and Montgomery article that we read for today's class, they lay out a four-pronged test that helps you to assess whether a resource or capability is strategic. Let's just talk through those very briefly. So the first one, of course, is, does the resource or capability create value? Does it either increase customers' willingness to pay and or cut costs? How might you know whether a resource or capability creates value? Well, for a resource in particular, if there's a market for the resource, for IP or for patents, a brand, if these things are traded on the marketplace, you get some sense of whether they're valuable or not. If you can demonstrate pretty clearly higher willingness to pay, so if you look at a luxury brand and consumers' willingness to pay more for a product that's functionally quite similar to a non-luxury version of the product, if there's a demonstrable cost advantage. We'll see an example of that in a minute. So the first thing, of course, is to be strategic, a resource capability has to create value. The second thing is the company has to be able to capture that value, right? That either the company owns outright the resources or capabilities, or if it's, say, in the form, the resources in the form of key individuals, that those individuals are locked in through a long-term contract or some other mechanism that make it unlikely that they walk out the door and take that value with them. The third is that the criterion that we want to apply is whether the resource capability is durable. Is it slow to depreciate in value? And so we see this, for instance, in well-established brands. They may over time decrease in value, but it tends not to be precipitous. It tends not to be sudden. Another thing you might look at in trying to assess the durability of a resource or capability is, are there opportunities to refresh that resource or capability, right? So with a brand, can we refresh our brand? If you own a movie franchise, is it possible to refresh that through sequels, prequels, origin stories, and so forth? And the fourth criterion, is it hard to copy or bypass? In the long run, almost any moat or wall can be bypassed in the long run. This is really a question around the midterm, okay? Over the midterm, can competitors easily copy or substitute for this resource or capability? And some things that confer midterm protection would be IP patents. You've got patent protection. You might have a trademark. If in the past others have tried to copy and failed, I mean, it's not a perfect predictor of the future, but it at least suggests that it's difficult for others to replicate this resource or capability. Another thing is we've talked about in the past is the interdependency of resources and capabilities makes it hard for a competitor to replicate your success by only copying one resource or capability. So by embedding resources and capabilities in a bundle, it makes it harder to beat you by just copying one of those resources or capabilities. Okay, let's take this four-pronged test for a quick test drive. So what we're looking at here on the vertical axis is the cost of production of a barrel of oil for various sources of oil, and the horizontal axis is cumulative oil production. And what we're focusing on Saudi Arabia and the reserves that they have. And what we see is that Saudi Arabia in 2007 could produce a barrel of oil for just over $20, and compare that with, say, North American producers or Canadian oil sands where it costs almost $100 to produce a barrel of oil. So is this resource, in this case a reserve of oil, is it strategic? Well, let's walk through our four-pronged test. So does it create value? Clearly. Okay, so the costs are clearly lower than a lot of the competitors, and demonstrably so. So it's a commodity. We wouldn't expect higher willingness to pay, but clearly creates value by conferring lower costs. Does the firm capture the value? Yep. These reserves are owned outright by the Saudi Arabian oil company, and so they capture the cash flows that result from having lower costs. Are these reserves durable? Yes, they're large. reserves. Not infinite. Nothing is infinite, but they're large enough to last for decades, certainly, at current demand for oil. Are they hard to copy or bypass? And again, I think here we have to be mindful of our time horizon. So in the short term or the midterm, very difficult to copy or bypass, petrochemicals as a source of energy. Looking farther out, solar power, nuclear power, wind power, as we move towards more sustainable energy, the role and importance of petrochemicals is going to decrease, of course. But in the midterm, such a large endowment of low-cost oil is difficult to copy or bypass. So by the four-pronged test that the Collis and Montgomery article suggests, it's clear that the Saudi Arabian oil reserves are a strategic resource. And when you're looking at any resource or capability that a firm has, could be brand, could be IP, could be a process, a capability, you want to apply the same logic to assess whether it's truly strategic or just another resource or capability.